So I'm Kate Floss, and I'm going to try to show you this law that's being passed by Kris Faafoi. Now, I'm going to try and navigate, but it's very, very complicated. So I'm on record here, and everyone's just going to have to bear with me because I'm just a very not a well-educated person, and I'm trying to show this, right? So you go to the bills in New Zealand Parliament. You can't see me, but you can hear me. Go to the bills in New Zealand Parliament, click on there, and that is going to take you to the proposed bills. And then you can see that this bill has been buried all the way, go right down here, keep going, keep going, keep going. They buried it in a whole bunch of other bills. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. And then here, right here, you're going to find, so a lot of people are not being able to find it because it's so far down. Click on it, and there's the man himself, the traitor to New Zealand. If I'm correct, I mean, everybody should understand that I'm just an average person, and I'm just saying this is in my conspiracy theory. This is how I see it. So anyone can tell me that I'm wrong, and I stand to be corrected if I am wrong. But this is how I'm presently seeing it. So then you can go down here, and you see here, read the bill. So here is the bill. Now, this is where it gets really complicated. And what it says is that it's the amendment to the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act of 1990. And then you go down to, it goes section 7A and 7B. Don't really worry about that too much, because it's just talking about the Attorney General to report to Parliament a declaration of inconsistency. But they've just made it that they only need to report it to the responsible minister, and the responsible minister will write a report about the inconsistency. But you go right down here to the Amendments to Human Rights Act 1993, and here is the amendments to the 1990 Act, which I went. Don't go to any of there because you won't understand it if you go in there. And here it goes 92 WA. Well, actually, you can go there because look, if it goes to section 5 here, the amendments to the Human Rights Act, and then you go to view the whole, and here is the amendment, right? And then you're going to go to section 92 WA. You can see how it is almost does seem like it is deliberately made to confuse people. Actually, you can see here it says required actions after the declarations of inconsistency, and the required actions after the declaration is made under section 92J. Now, here's the thing, 92J is not in here. It only just says that they're making the amendment, and then it says to 92J. So that's when you can't find what you're looking for, almost deliberately. But luckily for us, I am enjoying investigating things, and I was wondering, what does 92J mean? So It's 92J, and it's very sneaky in that it doesn't tell you 92J of what, but it is in fact 92J of the Human Rights Act. So then you've got to go out of here, and then you've got to go to the Human Rights Act. This is how sneaky this law is. 1993 of New Zealand. So who's going to know to do all this? They've really been sneaky. So then you've got to go to the Human Rights Act, and you go all the way to 92J. Wait for a minute. So 92J is here. Remedy for enactments in breach of Part 1A. So you click on there. And here is the remedy for enactments in breach of 1A. This is what it's saying. If in proceedings before the Human Rights Review Tribunal. So what happens is if there is an act of Parliament made and then somebody takes the 1990 human rights to the judge, and the judge says that act is in breach of your human rights, usually the entire act would have to be thrown out. So apparently, so rather than throw the entire act out, the judge will send it to a review tribunal, and the review tribunal will say if they can just only take the section of the act that is in breach. So you can still keep the act, but the section that is in breach of the Human Rights Act can be remedied. It can be removed or it can be fixed. So don't worry about that. We still got to study this a little bit. But so if it goes to the Human Rights Tribunal and the tribunal finds that there is a breach in Part 1A, so we have to go and look at Part 1A. But what you can see, just before we go there, this declaration may be granted by the tribunal if subsection 1, which is here, applies is a declaration that the enactment that is the subject of the finding is inconsistent with the right to freedom from discrimination affirmed in Section 19. So Section 19 is not specifically mentioned in Kris Faafoi's bill, and neither, I don't think even Part 1A is mentioned in Kris Faafoi's bill. In order to understand Kris Faafoi's bill, you have to go to Section 92 of the Human Rights Act. And then when you go to Section 92, that talks about 1A, and that tells you that it is in regards to Section 19 of the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act 1990. Now, as you all know, now this 92J was only inserted in 2002. So what they're doing is they insert one law. Oh, well, I won't talk about that later. Well, no, I will. So let's stay focused. Section 19 of the Human Rights Act, if you go and follow the trail, it takes you to hundreds of United Nations laws. So they've tagged that on to one New Zealand law, and whenever there's a problem with that law, Section 19, and it goes to the New Zealand courts, then Section 19 that is tagged to hundreds of other laws, all those other laws apply to New Zealand courts and the responsibility of New Zealand people. So there are more than 600 laws attached to Section 19 through the United Nations. Now, we'll go to 1A. We've got to go to two places. So when you go to 1A, it says 1A was inserted in 2002 by Section 6 of the Human Rights Amendment, which I haven't looked at Section 6. And it says here that the purpose of this act is to provide that, in general, an act or an omission that is inconsistent with the right to freedom from discrimination affirmed by Section 19 of the New Zealand Bill of Rights 1990 is in breach of this part if the act or omission is that of a person or body referred to in Section 3 of the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act. So very hard to understand for the average person. Lucky you've got Kate Floss on the ball here looking at what Kris Faafoi's up to. So what they're saying is that this new act, it says here, discrimination by government, related persons and bodies, or persons or bodies acting with legal authority. So this passing of this law is not anything to do with you New Zealanders, the average people on the ground. This is to do with government officials that are creating acts inside of Parliament. And if they create an act that is against Section 19, then this act will be removed. So this is basically, and then what we have to do is go to Section 3, which is here. Now, here is the kicker. Application. This Bill of Rights applies only to acts done by, am I allowed to use my pen? I don't have a little pen in here. By, this Bill of Rights applies only to acts done by the legislative, the executive, or judicial branches of the government of New Zealand, or by any person or body in the performance of any public function, power, or duty conferred or imposed on that person or body by or pursuant to law. So I'm just going to explain this. So we'll just go back through and I'll show you how to do it one more time so that it makes it simple. Right, we're going to turn everything off. Right, okay, I'll just start a new one. We'll turn that one off. So I'm going to show you what to do. So everyone can go and look, and it does take a bit of reading. So you're going to go bills. In bills, I just put bills, New Zealand, Parliament. Okay, and then you're going to go to proposed laws. Then you're going to scribble right down here where they buried it away so that nobody's going to see it. Nobody's going to be finding it. And then you're going to go to your New Zealand Bill of Wrongs, Declarations of Inconsistency. Then you're going to see Kris Faafoi's, we're not allowed to say things about him, but going to see Kris Faafoi and his face. And then we're going to read the bill. When we read the bill, you can read all that if you want, but you can see amendments to the Human Rights Act of 1993 and the amendments to the Human Rights Act. You're going to click on here. And then you can see the amendments to the Human Rights Act. This part amends the Human Rights Act. And you're going to view whole. So don't forget, view whole. Then when you get here, there's a whole plethora of mess. But what you're going to be looking for is sections 92 WA, which is here. This section applies if a declaration is made under section 92J, meaning under section 92J of the Human Rights Act. So that's why you might not know that. So that's when you've got to go out of here and you've got to go to your Human Rights Act. So you go to Human Rights Act 1993, New Zealand, or Human, I call them Humans. They're the Humans' rights. So go to your Humans' rights here, and then you're going to go down to section 92J. Go down to there. Where's 92J? Then you get your 92J. Going to click on there. See how sneaky they are? Go to section 92J, remedy for the acts, and that's going to explain it all to you. Then you're going to go to Part 1A. Here is the place where you can see that it's referring to Section 19 specifically, none of the other sections of the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act, and you're going to click Part 1A. You go to Part 1A, it says discrimination by government-related bodies. Then it says the purpose of this act is to remove acts or replace omissions. So it's either can put in omissions to an act or it can take out things of an act of Section 19 of the New Zealand Bill of Rights. And then you go to Section 3. And this is going to say that this act applies to legislative, executive, judicial branches of the government of New Zealand. So basically it's saying that Section 19, with its more than 600 laws and still counting, of the United Nations refugee protections, it's saying that no executive, no legislative, no executive, and no judicial branches can create an act that will be inconsistent with Section 19 and all of its 600 laws at the United Nations. So these are mostly laws for protecting refugee rights. We've got our 1688 Bill of Rights. These are for the human who are not able to stand under Protestant rights. And they've got hundreds and hundreds. And they want us to ascend to a law. I'm sending this to Her Majesty the Queen. They want us to ascend to a law that takes away all power of the New Zealand legislative, executive, and judicial branches from having any power of United Nations laws that have been covertly inserted into Section 19. So I hope that's going to help everybody, but it does take a few times to look at it to get your head around. There you go.